And let's bring in Brett Veach, the general manager of the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Brett, listen, I found a picture of you on the 1997 Pennsylvania All-State team, pictured alongside our very own LaVar Arrington. You were a two-time All-State player. Were you a better player than LaVar Arrington?
That's a great pick. I appreciate you sharing that. Look, I would love to sit here and say I was a better player, but people back in Pennsylvania know what kind of a player LaVar was. He was certainly an icon back in the state of Pennsylvania, a great pro player. I will say this, Jason, though, I feel like I have a strained relationship with LaVar ever since bumping into him and you guys in Miami, and LaVar emphatically picking the Niners to win the game. So he was a better player, but I think our relationship is strained a bit.
Yeah, not a good prognosticator. We know that. No, we tolerate him here, though. All right, you won a Super Bowl championship. What does a Super Bowl champion general manager do for fun during a quarantine?
Oh, wow. Aside from cranking out a lot of web chats with players and watching a lot of tape, I would probably have to say getting a lot of batting practice in with the kids outside. You know, their season's certainly suspended like everyone else's, and I got to try to dust off the old curveball and off-speed pitch because my kids are getting proficient at the fastball. So I'd say working on my overall pitching game right now.
Now, Andy Reid says that you saw Patrick Mahomes and said he was the best prospect you've ever seen. If that's true, what did you see that others missed?
Well, look, I mean, after Pat's rookie season, we traded Alex Smith, and I got asked by the national media at the Combine in 2018 what we thought of moving forward with Pat Mahomes. And I said, look, he's the best player I've ever seen. And I think from the time we started the process with Patrick, his talent was undeniable, but he just has that uncanny ability to make people around him better. And whether that was at Texas Tech during his sophomore and junior seasons and even early on in his freshman year and coming into the league, he just has he's the ultimate competitor. He makes people around him better. And I think one thing both you guys can appreciate being around the sport for so long, when you are at this level, it is so hard to really stand out and to make other great players look average. And to have this kid come in here as a rookie during rookie camps and even preseason, even though he wasn't a full-time starter, he's just, every time the ball is in his hands, he just has the ability to kind of separate himself. And, we knew it was a matter of time. And fortunately for us, Patrick has made everyone here look smart.
Now, how difficult will it be to pay Patrick Mahomes what he's worth without compromising your salary cap?
Yeah, listen, there'll be some challenges along the way. And those are good problems to have. I think if you're general manager of an NFL team, and if given a choice to have cap problems or have the best player in the NFL, I think every GM would take having the best player in the NFL on their team. So, look, there'll be challenges, but, Pat's driven to win a lot of Super Bowls, and his mindset is like ours, to establish a legacy and to have this thing be successful for a long time. There'll be a lot of dialogue from now until the start of the season, but we're all confident that we'll be able to do something that is beneficial for us and beneficial for him, and everybody wins in the end.
Now, you said he was the best prospect you ever seen. You had him in his rookie year, and you saw him every day in practice. You ever question, should you have played him more as a rookie?
Oh, that's a good question. And, we've been asked that a lot. I'll say this. The credit here goes to Coach Reid. This was his plan, his vision. Do I think that we could have played Pat as a rookie and had success? Sure. I think that what he's accomplished so far kind of speaks for itself. But, again, I think what people sometimes overlook and don't understand is the value and the experience that working underneath a guy like Alex Smith provided Pat. I mean, Pat had the ability right away, but him able to come in, learn from Alex, and, it's a marathon this season. So to come in and see every day what it's like to prep on Monday, prep on Tuesday, adjust throughout the season and see different tendencies from different coordinators throughout the year. Pat would have had that experience. So Pat will be the first one to tell you how beneficial Alex Smith was to his career. And I certainly think we're in the position we are because of all of the mentorship that Alex Smith provided Pat.
All right, you go all the way back to Philadelphia with Andy Reid. You were a football player at the University of Delaware. How did you make the connection to Andy Reid to become Andy Reid's assistant coach in Philadelphia? How'd that come about?
Yes, a lot of, like anything in life, is being in the right place at the right time. I had a relationship with the now Baltimore Ravens quarterback coach, James Urban, who at the time was Coach Reid's assistant. And, he had reached out to me, wanted me to work training camp as an intern while I was at the University of Delaware. So I spent a few seasons working with James Urban, who was Coach Reid's assistant at the time, working at training camp. And then when James got promoted up, there was an opening there to be coach's assistant. And James kind of reached out to me and told me he recommended me to coach. And the rest is history. So I certainly have to thank James for really getting my foot in the door.
You know, there's more history to this. Before James Urban, I believe Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, was Andy Reid's assistant. Then James Urban, then you. And then when you transition, you recommend Matt Nagy, who's now the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Tell the story of Andy Reid's reaction when you suggested Matt Nagy should join his coaching staff as an assistant coach to the assistant coaches.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. You know, at this position, coach's assistant, it's very similar to being a GA in college. So everyone who has had a position like a grad assistantship knows it's a lot of grunt work, a lot of long hours, and not a lot of pay. So when I transitioned over to the scouting world, Coach had asked me if I had any recommendations, and I told Coach, I said, there's this kid I played college ball with, Matt Nagy. I said he would be a great candidate to be a coach's assistant. And Coach was like, all right, let's bring him in. I'm assuming he's not married and he has flexible hours. And I told Coach, I said, actually, he's married, but again, I think he'd be a great candidate. And then Coach was like, well, we can work with that, but as long as he has no kids, because he'll never be home. And I told Coach, I said, actually, he has 4 kids. And Coach just looked at me and said, there's no way, this kid's not going to be able to work 16-hour days with 4 kids. But credit to Matt's wife, Stacy, to figuring it all out and providing him this opportunity, and certainly was excited to see Matt get this opportunity in Chicago. And but it was a funny story, and it certainly turned out well for everyone.
All right, so James Urban's coaching Lamar Jackson. You're the general manager of the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. Sean McDermott's the head coach of the Bills. Matt Nagy's the head coach of the Bears. Being an NFL head coach, to me, is really about coaching the assistant coaches because they're paid to coach the players. What makes Andy Reid such a great coach of other coaches?
Right. Well, he's a guy that just believes in his process, and he never overlooks the details. And I think he installed that in me early on, and he installs that in all the coaches that come in and work for him. And the game isn't won on Sunday. The game is won Monday through Friday, and it's done the hard way. It's a lot of tape work. It's a lot of paying attention to the details and the finer aspects of the process. And I think that when he brings people in, he coaches that element and aspect first, so that when these guys go on to coach their players and move on to different organizations, they understand that there are no shortcuts to success. And every part of the process is important. And if you overlook one part, you're not going to have success. So I think all of those people that you mentioned, I think that we've all were grounded early on, and Coach kind of took us under his wing. And, we value the long days and the early mornings. But we know at the end of the day that if you follow this process, it'll work out and be successful.
Now, Brett, with all of this experience and your background as a coach, why didn't you continue down that coaching path like McDermott and Urban and others, and Nagy, like you mentioned?
Well, that's a good question. I think when I first started, I think that was your natural inclination to think, well, I love football and I want to stay involved in the game. I think at the time when I was working with Coach, I think early on in his career it was all coaching, and then he had that middle phase in his career was coaching / GM. Now it's back to coaching, but I think I kind of hit him during the time of his career where he was doing a lot of both. So I was exposed to both the coaching stuff during the fall and the scouting evaluation stuff in the spring. And the more I got to get involved, helping him out with the evaluation process, the more I fell in love with it. So I think probably the initial intention was to maybe venture off into the coaching world. But once he got me involved with the personnel stuff, I fell in love with it and wanted to stick that route.
Now, once you fell in love with the process of evaluating personnel, was your vision to be the general manager along Andy Reid? What were you thinking in those moments?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I ever got ahead of myself, and I think that's one of the things that I would probably say that has helped me along this process. I think, once I had the opportunity to work in the personnel side, I started off as an in-house scout, and after a while, I thought, wow, it'd be great to be an area scout. And then after being an area scout, I thought, wow, it'd be great to bounce around and do multiple areas. And then after that, I thought it'd be great to do multiple areas plus pro. So I think having the experience and knowing what each part of your personnel staff goes through, I think I'm able to relate to guys in my pro staff. I'm able to relate to national scouts. I'm also able to relate to area guys and know the challenges that they present themselves. So I don't know if I ever got ahead of myself early on, but I do think looking back on where I started from and where I am, I'm very thankful to have kind of worked your way up the right way and to really value each part of this personnel department.
Now, I'm not sure anybody can relate to what's about to happen next week in terms of a virtual draft. You being a general manager, where are you preparing, and what's this process and your concern level in entering this virtual draft? Andy Reid says he's prepping in his basement. How about you?
Yeah, no, we're all at home, and we're all kind of, have makeshift basements. And, before we hopped on, I kind of showed you guys the little inside here. I can't show it publicly because I got my magnets on the board and got my walls magnetized. I got video screens everywhere, magnets on the board. We got a bunch of computers, virtual chats going. So I think we'll be prepared. It's a level playing field. All the teams have to go through this. And I think for the most part, we've had so much lead-in time to this draft. I think that we're all excited about this virtual draft. And I think if you ask all general managers, the one thing that will be concerning will just be if you get that last-second trade offer where I think we're all prepared to handle trades, but if you're on the clock and you're ready to turn the card in with 30 seconds left, a team calls and wants to make a trade, just being sure that we have the communication on point and we know how to get people into certain chat rooms, whether it be doctors, area scouts, owners. So we'll do a couple more mocks with that and do some hypothetical scenarios and some last-minute trades. But I think barring the last-second trade offers, I think we'll be ready to go, and the anxiety won't be as bad as what we initially thought.
Brett, let me ask you a follow-up on that. Will it be more difficult because of the coronavirus to discover that diamond in the rough prospect that maybe you could in previous drafts when you had a little bit more time, had more time to get face-to-face with potential draft picks? Any concern that you won't be able to find the diamond in the rough like previous years?
Well, that's a good point. There's no doubt that because of, look, we're all aware of the top prospects and we're all aware of the guys that, went to the combine, and we're all aware of the guys at the big schools. Every year we see some small school guys that come out of nowhere and post big 40 times and big test numbers, and it forces all of us to do a second and third look. What I do think will be important is the continuation of this process. So, once you get through, like, for example, if this were last year, you feel like you've exhausted everything and every bit of information on prospects. I do feel that there'll be some small school guys that, maybe there'll be no mandatory mini camps, and maybe we'll go right to training camp. Hopefully we do. But I think that's a continuation of this process, and to make sure we continue to keep guys on the board and go back and do some whenever we're able to work in a full capacity. I think you'll see some pre-camp workouts. I think you'll see some, additional discussion and deliberation that goes on that typically doesn't go on from now to the start of training camp, because there will be a pool of players that there just wasn't a lot of information on in regards to times and medical. So I do think that'll be important for us to stay up to date from now until the start of training camp.
All right, I'm going to play the role of Chris Jones's agent right now. Other than Aaron Donald, I think Chris Jones is the best defensive tackle in football. You guys have hit him with a franchise tag. Do you anticipate being able to get a long-term deal done with the best player on your defense?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's our goal, and that's our intent, and then we're going to certainly put our best foot forward. We have some time. I think the deadline is July 15th to get something done with him. So we do have some time, but again, the franchise tag speaks for itself in regards to how we value him, and we know that when we have the ability to pair him and Frank Clark together, it's a lethal combination. So we're going to put our best foot forward and make every attempt to get that done. And like I said, I think time works on our side here. We have a lot of time, and certainly there'll be continued discussions from now until July 15th.
All right, we'll let you go on this note, an easy one. I say Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, the modern-day version of Joe Montana and Bill Walsh. What do you say?
Well, that's really good company right there. I think you look at Bill Walsh, Hall of Fame coach, legend of the game. Andy Reid, Hall of Fame coach, legend of the game. Joe Montana, one of the greatest to ever play. And I think that Jason Marcellus, you'd agree with me. I think Pat Mahomes is certainly on that trajectory. So, those guys won 3 Super Bowls together. We got 1 down, 2 to go. But I said that sounds good to me.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. And be sure to check out more of the best clips from Speak For Yourself, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.